Hello again, everyone. Edwin Learnard back once again. In this YouTube astrological segment, I'm going to be talking about astrology and Donald Trump versus LeBron James. Now, as many of you may know that Donald Trump and LeBron James have had a certain war of words in recent time, and I'm going to look at some things astrologically as to why they may be and why the situation with them is somewhat contentious. Now, first, I want to talk about their composite chart. Now, on the composite chart, the ascendant is in Cancer, and that could show, of course, great sensitivity to any criticism and ridicule. It is also at a very high degree, at 28 degrees, which is close to the full culmination of the sign. Not quite 29, of course, but also, too, looking at the 28th degree, of Cancer, as far as Sabian symbols go, this could indicate where it could be very imperative, I would say, really to be where each person might feel it's imperative to be on the lookout for their, I guess you could say, their negative remarks and that are made by one another, maybe to defend them quickly or what have you. And there might be a proclivity also to be lamenting over the past strongly. Now, Cancer energy could be like that anyway, but it may be more emphasized with this degree compared to most. So anyway, also in the chart, the moon being the chart ruler is in Aquarius, and it's conjunct the 8th house cusp. Now, this could be a lot of this energy. Maybe this energy might be going into unpredictability and spontaneity that might cause some crisis for these people mutually. Now, the thing about it is, and that's where they're really, when you look at this, the 8th house is also connected with power as well. Now, the Sun and MC are both in Aries in the composite chart. The MC is at 13 degrees Aries, which of course is a critical degree. Sun in Aries at 1 degree, it falls in the 9th house of global communication. So there could be a very strong focus and attention as far as this connection goes, maybe on very strong outspokenness on philosophical matters where there might be little hesitation given that it's at 1 degree. Now, LeBron James has stated that he would not sit across from the president, which I think basically intimates he would not speak with him directly or be in that same room with him in a conversation or communication. Now, there are a number of indicators in this composite chart for limited and restricted communications. Well, as far as the two go. Now, first off, Gemini falls on the 12th house cusp of limitations, and the ruler of the 12th house of restriction is in the 3rd house of communication. That's another restriction and communication indicator. I have that natally, actually, and I don't think it necessarily means that there's going to be lacking in terms of verbosity or being able to express oneself in an articulate manner necessarily, but a lot of times this indicates the limitations in terms of who you're, like in my case, in my natal chart, in terms of the people I communicate with. So I wouldn't expect an overabundance of at least direct communication between these two. Now, also in that composite chart, going back to the other indicators of restrictions in their communications, Pluto and Saturn are in that 3rd house as well in the composite chart. Now, Pluto can downright obliterate and destroy, and it could be doing so practically with their communications. Saturn there can certainly restrict them as well. Now, Saturn also conjuncts Mercury in this composite chart as well. So that's another indicator of that clamp on communications. Now, the 7th house is the house. Now, in the composite chart as well, the ruler of the 7th house falls in the 3rd house. Now, the 7th house is, of course, the house of relationships, and the 3rd house arguably can be that most unstable house of the zodiac. Now, that could indicate that even if there are any communications that may persist, they could be very erratic and sporadic. Now, the thing about this, too, is that Uranus is also in the third house, which could show, again, could emphasize that erratic and sporadic communications at best. And also, another thing I noticed in this composite chart that's interesting, between the one between Donald Trump and LeBron James, is that Mars is at 0 degrees Gemini in the 11th house in this composite chart. And this could be an indicator, being at 0 degrees, of constantly initiating arguments with sharp verbal witticisms. Now, and that could be kind of their quote-unquote their aspiration, being in that it's in that 11th house. Now, and the fact 11th house, again, being on, it could be connected with the internet and social media, I believe, as well. Now, I think when I look at this too, Virgo, in this composite chart, Virgo falls on the third house cusp, which could indicate that communications could be very judgmental and critical. And Virgo, of course, this is really not just the fact that Virgo falls on the third house cusp, but Mercury is in Virgo as well in the composite chart, and that could accentuate and emphasize this. This could be very judgmental, critical communications, and there might be very strong, near everything but compulsive complaining by both. Now going into their natal charts. Well, Donald Trump, of course, he has the sun in Gemini, and that conjuncts LeBron James's Gemini ascendant. Now, LeBron may simply have that uncanny ability to make the sun in Gemini emerge, so to speak, and just come right out. And the thing is, too, that also many of you may know, I should say, the voluble and loquacious Gemini sun. But many of you may know is that Donald Trump has criticized LeBron's intellect in one of his tweets anyway, at least intimated that LeBron has very low intellect. Now, what I think is interesting about that is that Trump's Saturn in Cancer falls in LeBron James's second house, which could be an indicator of limiting or restricting one's self-esteem and self-worth. Now, another thing I noticed too, LeBron James's Mercury in Sagittarius makes an opposition to Trump's Sun in Gemini. Now, this can suggest that LeBron could have that ability to speak out, speaking his veritable truth against who he thinks Trump really is, which of course is the Sun, and maybe perhaps sees him as his basic character as rather superficial and shallow, being that this is the Sun in Gemini. Now, another thing that I noticed too, I want to go back to, I'm going to rewind a little bit momentarily, people, that going back to that composite chart of Donald Trump and LeBron James, that of course with the zodiac sign Cancer on the cusp of the first house, Capricorn is on the seventh house cusp. Now, I think the way this may manifest for them in terms of their connection is that this could be where they could be making government political figures somewhat adversarial to them. They could create them as open enemies. Well, as far as Donald Trump goes, I'm sure he's got a lot of allies being in politics, but this could actually maybe irritate some people that are in government positions because they might be ashamed of, maybe to some degree, how Trump is acting and is having this open debate with LeBron James and being so derisive toward him. So Donald Trump might be making some adversaries by doing this with government, maybe people that are prominent in politics in the government. And LeBron James may be doing so as well, because of course if you have Trump as an adversary, there's obviously a number of people that are in Donald Trump's corner that are political government figures that are going to be adversarial toward LeBron because of this. So anyway, now going back to the natal chart synastry with these two. Now, another thing that I noticed too is that what's interesting is that LeBron James's Mars in Pisces falls in Donald Trump's seventh house. And many of you may know that recently his wife Melanie actually sided with LeBron in that recent argument. And now what seems like LeBron might be able to do by having his Mars in Pisces fall in Donald Trump's 7th house, and making that, and it also makes the opposition to Donald Trump's ascendant. He could actually make a significant other become adversarial toward Donald Trump, and it could cause some confusion and be very perplexing, given the fact, I mean, which might seem confusing maybe to Donald Trump, and causing him to feel somewhat perplexed, given that this is Pisces energy. Now, another thing, LeBron's North Node in Taurus makes a close conjunction to Donald Trump's MC. Now, could it be that LeBron might simply be destined to persistently and perhaps even obstinately be involved in Trump's public image? Perhaps. Also, Trump's sun in Gemini falls in LeBron James's 12th house of limitations. Now, maybe this has something to do with Donald Trump trying to shine light on his so-called construed and perceived LeBron's limited intellect. Another thing, too, is that Donald Trump's Pluto falls in LeBron James's 3rd house. And this could be an indicator of communication obliteration. And LeBron James's Pluto also falls in Donald Trump's 3rd house. But given this could be where both of these two might be trying, maybe it's a good thing they're not in the same room talking, because with each of their Plutos falling in each other's 3rd house, you could see all this conversation domination perhaps, and also one might be trying to they might both try to monopolize it, and you might hear a lot of talking over each other as well. So maybe it's actually a good thing, maybe it's beneficial that they're not talking together but in the same room. But anyway, another thing too is that Donald Trump's Mars falls in LeBron's 3rd house, which could be an indicator, which could make really cause LeBron James to be very incensed in terms of his thinking, and cause certain anger, angry thoughts. And also too, going back to the fact that their Plutos fall in each other's 3rd house. The one positive thing could be that maybe if they actually got together and spoke, the conversations can be perhaps deep and provocative. Now, another thing is that LeBron James's Jupiter in Capricorn makes an opposition to Donald Trump's Saturn in Cancer. Now, this could indicate very strong philosophical differences. And what this could be is that perhaps looking at this is that maybe looking at that opposition is that maybe LeBron might see Donald Trump maybe lacking, being restricted, and showing some kind of sympathy and compassion, which may go against LeBron's viewpoints on maybe how someone prominent in the government maybe should be. Now, another thing too is that that's a very adverse synastry aspect these two have, is that Donald Trump's Leo ascendant makes an opposition to LeBron's Venus in Aquarius. Now, the way I look at this is that, I mean, sometimes Leo energy, and when it's especially prominent like the ascendant, I mean, it could be about Leo ascendant in some cases in a very negative manifestation, may simply want others to really kind of bow down to them and really do everything but worship them. And I think the way this works out in the synastry aspect is that with LeBron having his Venus in Aquarius making an opposition to Trump's Leo ascendant, well, it not only could indicate cultural disparities perhaps, but this could be, I mean, going back, I mean, the Leo ascendant, of course, would be very domineering, expect others to bow to them. Venus in Aquarius may simply oppose this, valuing a more non-conforming nature and more freedom of expression, and not worried about whether they have to bow down, so to speak, or no matter who is rebuffed because of us, not necessarily having to cater and conform to what others necessarily want. And this is where you can have this conflict between the two, I think. Now, another thing too is that Donald Trump's Mercury in Cancer actually falls in LeBron James's first house. Now, this could make Trump somewhat valuable regarding LeBron James and where he could actually, at times, he might want to be talking about him very extensively. But it makes me wonder with this is that maybe LeBron, even though he may not come out and say it, maybe could be somewhat impressed by Trump's ability to articulate his thoughts and, being Mercury in Cancer, extemporize in speech and be able to really articulate their thoughts and really in a way, in a very maybe clear manner, and being able to put their thoughts together into sentences, put his thoughts together into sentences very quickly, and think fast as well, as far as his comebacks go, at least. So, and another thing too, I noticed, which is interesting, a synastry aspect, is that LeBron James's Mercury in Sagittarius makes a conjunction to Donald Trump's Moon in Sagittarius. Now, LeBron's words may cause very blunt, outspoken responses from Trump, to the point where he might demoralize others, and in this case try to do that to LeBron James. Now, well, in summation, I think there's simply too many elements in the composite chart and the natal synastry aspects that for these two to overcome. I'm like, can you say irreconcilable differences? I do see this animosity that exists between the two may go on for some time. And I mean, astrology out of the way, maybe there will come a time where they can just maybe sit down and just have a talk and talk things out, talk about their disparities in a constructive manner. I don't know if that's going to come anytime soon, though. Anyway, people, that'll conclude this YouTube astrological segment for astrology and Donald Trump versus LeBron James. Stay tuned next time, where I'll be talking about 29 degrees Pisces. Two things I want to get with you on before I head out. Firstly, the stars may impel but do not compel. And secondly, never isolate any single astrological element, aspect, planetary placement, position, configuration, influence, or what have you, and make an analysis of a person, astrologically speaking, based on this alone, because astrologically speaking, the person is the sum of all their components in their natal chart and not just one. Until next time, people, stay well.